addressed by the issues being aired, argued, and dealt with, preferably outside the legal process. For me, the best way to increase society's resistance to insulting or offensive speech is to allow a lot more of it. As with childhood diseases, you can better resist those germs to which you have been exposed. We need to build our immunity to taking offence so that we can deal with the issues that perfectly justified criticism can raise.
Atkinson's defense of comedy highlights a growing unease within the artistic community. Many comedians echo his sentiments, arguing that humor is a vital part of societal discourse, allowing us to confront uncomfortable truths. The rising tide of censorship has left many feeling stifled, as the fear of backlash looms over the creative process. Comedians contend that the essence of their craft lies in tackling taboo subjects and challenging societal norms, a practice that has historically fostered progress and understanding. Atkinson's remarks serve as a rallying cry for performers who feel increasingly isolated by political correctness. They argue that the power of laughter lies in its ability to bridge divides, offering a unique lens through which to examine the human experience. In this volatile climate, preserving the integrity of comedic expression is seen not just as a matter of personal freedom, but as an essential component of a healthy democracy. Meanwhile, Starmer's administration faces growing scrutiny. Critics suggest that his approach threatens not only the arts but the very foundation of free speech itself. As indignation swells, it remains to be seen whether this public outcry will prompt a reassessment of the boundaries imposed on creative expression.
With the reasonable and well-intentioned ambition to contain obnoxious elements in society, has created a society of an extraordinarily authoritarian and controlling nature. That is what you might call the new intolerance, a new but intense desire to gag uncomfortable voices of dissent. I am not intolerant, say many people, say many softly spoken, highly educated, liberal-minded people. I'm only intolerant of intolerance.
Rowan Atkinson believes that an ideal life includes freedom of speech and access to essential resources. It seems straightforward, right? However, the reality is that many individuals in Britain lack both, and it's clear who is responsible for this situation. Starmer has even cut winter fuel payments, leaving over 1.6 million struggling pensioners without the funds they need. As a result, these individuals are left without heaters that could protect them during the harsh winter months. How can anyone allow people to find themselves in such a dire predicament? This isn't merely an oversight, it's a genuine betrayal.
This week, a suspected rapist was let out of prison by Keir Starmer. I'm not making this up. You'd have seen the news. The first few of 5,500 prisoners who were going to be released between now and the end of October, and he was immediately rearrested on suspicion of rape and sexual assault. And I know that young people who want to go out on Friday and Saturday nights, women perhaps more than men, are really scared about what's going on Britain's streets. And I tell you what, folks, letting people out of prison who are suspected of being rapists is not the right way to go. We need to build more prisons and keep people inside for longer. Tell me, please, give me some comments.
So what's the core issue in this troubling situation? First, people are struggling to make ends meet, handing over their hard-earned money to unscrupulous individuals in suits, and now they're being targeted by street criminals as well. It's a true nightmare for those who must live in constant fear, knowing that violent offenders are back on the streets due to Starmer's reckless choices. How can they be so apathetic toward the plight of everyday citizens who are suffering because of his errors? This isn't merely a failure, it's a catastrophe that impacts the lives of thousands.
And your son Stephen Bell was murdered at the age of 22, and you're a knife crime campaigner, gainer. And, you know, the guy that did this was actually released early, wasn't he?
Yes. But not only that, you know, I foresaw that he'd reoffend again, which he has done. He's reoffended for a violent crime. This guy, to me, is somebody that terrifies me to be on the streets, because before the age of 20, he'd committed something like 19 crimes. That was before he killed my son. He's reoffended. He was locked up again. He's been locked up for 2 years. I didn't find out until the parole hearing, which I was invited to attend, which he would not face me again. That's another subject. I'm not facing, you know, the victims.
Starmer's decision certainly sparked discontent among the British public, but it isn't his most serious action. This is why Atkinson expressed deep disappointment when discussing various events that have affected freedom of speech in the country. The real issue likely stems from politics being used as a tool for manipulation instead of serving the needs of the people. Starmer appears cold and calculating, playing a game where ordinary citizens end up as the casualties. At times, it feels as though those in positions of power have forgotten that the true strength of the state lies in its people.
Pressure's growing on Sir Keir Starmer to reverse his decision to cut winter fuel payments for the most pensioners. The head of Britain's largest trade union has accused Labour of picking the pocket of pensioners while leaving the richest totally untouched. The Prime Minister is facing a possible rebellion by some Labour MPs when the Parliament votes on policy tomorrow.
However, Starmer believed this was insufficient and once again jeopardized the safety and peace of the public by releasing thousands of prisoners. Now these individuals are free to roam the streets, which is extremely concerning. How can they be so careless about the lives and safety of citizens?
In a recent interview you gave with the Irish Times, you said, comedy's job is to offend, and it seems nowadays people are very careful about what they joke about. Do you worry about where comedy is going?
Not greatly, because it's a cyclical thing. You know, 1 minute, certain jokes or certain attitudes and outlooks are just out of fashion. And in the end, the whole point of a joke is to entertain people. And if people are not entertained, then you haven't, fulfilled your brief. And so I'm a great believer that we must have free expression, and in comedy you must be able to make jokes about absolutely anything. I mean, the only question is you would be wise to choose a context in which it's going to be appreciated, because not all jokes suit all contexts. The joke you tell around a table in a restaurant with some friends is not necessarily something for primetime TV.
Atkinson argues that these significant restrictions need to be removed so that comedians can once again exercise their right to freedom of speech. If the law in the UK remains as it is, the country will soon be overrun with convicts, while the innocent languish behind bars. Comedy has always served as a reflection of society, highlighting its flaws and vices, and if we attempt to suppress this art form, we will be denying ourselves a vital means of self-reflection.
I don't know what the atmosphere was in the room. If people pay to see a comedian, they've got to accept whatever they provide. I'm a great believer that artists should never apologize for their art. You put something out there, you paint a watercolor, you make a joke, you make a television show, whatever it is. If people are offended, that's their problem. It's not yours. You've done your bit. If they don't want you to work for them again, then that's, that may become your problem, but you've done your bit and you've done your best, and it's up to the audience to judge. I'm a great believer that if a joke has an appreciative audience, no matter how small, no matter who they are, then it is worthy. It should be, as it were.
Let's focus on the two-tier system at play here. This dual standard elevates some individuals while others bear the burden of restrictions and oppression. Aristocrats, enjoying privileges, are shielded from the repercussions of their actions, while ordinary citizens face harsh penalties for the same offenses. Rowan Atkinson underscores the critical need for freedom of expression for comedians who are stifled by censorship. He argues that this situation undermines the very core of comedy, which should provoke thought and foster discussion. Interference in comedians' work represents a regression, leading to society's indifference to significant issues. Atkinson calls on citizens to come together against injustice and defend their right to free expression. He believes that only through collective action can we combat this pervasive trend of suppressing creativity.
Our priority should be to deal with the message, not the messenger. As President Obama said in an address to the United Nations only a month or so ago, laudable efforts to restrict speech can become a tool to silence critics or oppress minorities. The strongest weapon against hateful speech is not repression, it is more speech. And that's the essence of my thesis, more speech. If we want a robust society, we need more robust dialogue, and that must include the right to insult or to offend.
Atkinson is a true icon and a pivotal figure in the comedy world, having entertained audiences for many decades. When someone of his stature speaks out, it's important to pay attention to what he has to say. Most importantly, Atkinson does not seek to belittle or offend. Instead, he shares his insights on the peculiar cultural shift that has placed comedy under the microscope of critics. Each year, the boundaries of the comedy genre become increasingly vague, exposing aspects that were once deemed taboo. Atkinson addresses this issue, highlighting how many comedians now feel the need to constantly monitor what topics are acceptable for humor. What is your opinion about this video? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. See you